Hello, everyone. Very nice to be with you. This is the new rules of influencer marketing. And I think one of the best ways to start out and start understanding and thinking about kind of these rules is to actually talk about what is influencer marketing, what we think that people maybe miss out about it, and then highlight kind of a fun way to kind of get to know the field if you haven't done hundreds of campaigns like we have before. So to start off with, influencer marketing, what is influencer marketing? We define it as the practice of promoting a product or service by strategically partnering with those who inspire or guide the actions of others. And there's a few words in there that are key. So one, we need to work with those who influence others, inspire or guide the action of others. And it's about helping other people take action. So that's the first thing about influencer marketing at its best, that it's action-oriented. It can spark, conversion. It can spark trial. It can spark downloads. It can spark social sharing. But at its best, it's an action-oriented discipline, number one. Number two, you can see the word there, partnering. So it's about working together with those who can inspire or guide the actions of others. So it sometimes gets, sometimes people think that it's all about, okay, we're buying reach, we're buying exposure, we're buying awareness. And there's some elements of influencer marketing that do relate to advertising, but it's also actually about partnering and how do we work together with those who influence. That's another aspect. There's another word here about promoting a product or service. So influencer marketing works really well, whether that's B2C, B2B, whether that's something that's productized, whether it's a service, it works across all of that. And influencer marketing is a practice that, on top of all of that, you get better and better over time. So it's as you deepen relationships with influencers, as you start to do repeat campaigns, that practice part means it's not sort of a one and done. We've bought an ad, that ad is over, but it's about actually cultivating that relationship over time. So what is influencer marketing? It's the practice of promoting a product or service by strategically partnering with those who inspire or guide the action of others. And there's a fun little game we often play when I'm speaking at conferences or on panels. And it's a great way to kind of understand some of the nuances of this and why that has an impact on the campaign right now, and why now is such a great time to be a company or a brand or an organization engaged in influencer marketing. So let's play this influencer game. So here's the question for you. I have two choices. You can choose option A or option B. And we'll use this as a way in to start to uncover where there are opportunities right now, even during the pandemic, for those of us who are influencer marketers. So let's look at the first part of the game. So question for you is this: which dudes, two types of influence here, have greater social reach? The first dude is Matt LeBlanc, celebrity, was famous for being an actor on the TV show Friends. And the second set of dudes is Dude Perfect, a group of social media influencers that do all kinds of amazing feats or challenges or achievements, sort of create these kind of cool viral videos and share them. The question for you is, which dudes have greater social reach? And the answer, Jackson, I don't know if you think it's option A, option B. Here's do you have a choice? Do you have a preference?
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with option B.
Option B, Dude Perfect. And let's see here. You are correct. Maybe that's because you're wise beyond your years, but that's because Dude Perfect has 9.9 million Instagram fans, while Friends star Matt LeBlanc, no slouch either, has 3.5 million followers. So the point in the first kind of introduction to influencer marketing is that, yes, celebrity marketing is important, but sometimes if you do it right, that even those that don't have celebrity status could actually have greater reach. So sometimes you have to put some of your assumptions about that to the door as you start this. Okay, let's go to the next question. So question, if you're gonna go the celebrity route, which comedian is more expensive to hire? Is it Terry Crews? You've seen him in different TV shows and media and movies. Or is it Jim Gaffigan, famous stand-up comic, also in some entertainment, known for his routine on Hot Pockets. So what do you think it is? Terry Crews or Jim Gaffigan? And we actually know the answer to this because for a campaign recently, we actually looked at hiring both of them. Actually, we ended up hiring a third option who's not on there, Joel McHale, for this campaign. So, and that's because Terry Crews and Jim Gaffigan were pretty expensive. What do you think? Who's more expensive to hire? Terry Crews or Jim Gaffigan?
We got 2 for Terry Crews and 1 for Jim Gaffigan. I'm going to throw my lot in with Jim Gaffigan. So we're going to be 50-50 on this one.
Okay. Well, here you go. And the answer to this right now is Jim Gaffigan, who costs about $1 million to work with for an influencer campaign. That's typically a day rate for him. So like he's going to do a day of work for a particular brand. Terry Crews, about $600,000. So not that inexpensive either. But Jim Gaffigan wins just because some of the reach he generates for his kind of stand-up comedy and stand-up routine. But the point I want to make here is that with influencer marketing, I mean, you can actually recreate some of the reach of a celebrity by actually pooling different influencers together. So it doesn't have to be always celebrity focused. We could actually look at, okay, how can we get Jim Gaffigan or Terry Crews like reach, but with maybe less well-known people who still have very loyal audiences, and we can put them together in different teams and duplicate that kind of effect. And third and final question, here's the last one. Which viral photo had more comments? And I don't know if you remember and think back, these were both kind of viral photos that went viral just because of what they were, kind of their uniqueness, their surprise factor, what they actually kind of, their sort of social commentary it was related to. First photo was tired nurse, option A, just overwhelmed after a long day, or B, Matt from Walmart has his own style, working hard. What do you think, Jackson? What are we thinking? Tired nurse or Matt from Walmart? Which photo has more comments?
What do you think, guys? It looks like we got 2 for Matt. We got 1 for tired nurse. I'm going to go with Matt as well.
Matt, okay. Well, Matt is a compelling photo to comment on. But actually, the answer is tired nurse. They both had a lot of comments. To give you a sense of scale, 17,000 comments on tired nurse, 16,000 comments on Matt from Walmart. What's interesting is that tired nurse had a little bit of a stronger, deeper purpose involved. Both were kind of interesting for how they were sort of simple and surprising, but tired nurse had like a little bit more to say, and hence we saw a little bit more comments. We'll talk about how you get either photos or copy or a purpose that causes things to be shared in influencer marketing a little bit later, but the answer is tired nurse. So with that being said, I'm going to kind of jump out and we're going to start the main part of this presentation in a second. But just to kind of begin with, and just to reiterate, what we're going to do today is talk about some of the assumptions we have about influencer marketing and why there's a whole new set of new rules that allows us to better leverage influencers in new and exciting ways. And one of the reasons why this is such a timely topic right now is it's a great time to be involved in influencer marketing because there's a lot of deals to be done. Why is that the case? Well, a few reasons. Number one, because of the pandemic, because of COVID-19, a lot of brands pulled back marketing they were doing, and influencers felt that too. So if you're someone that has a company or a product or a brand that has something interesting to say, that can say that through influencers, now is a great time to do it because there's a lot less competitions for other brands for influencers' time. So it's a great time to reach out because some of that work has dried up, especially in verticals like travel for sure. Lots of travel influencers looking to do work on different partnerships. Now is a great time to do it, and a lot of influencers that may have been out of your reach previously would not be out of your reach now because they're looking for deals to do. And also right now, it's a major time as well because right now, at the same time, audiences are engaging at a very high rate. We track engagement on influencer campaigns for us, as well as on a lot of other digital campaigns right now. All of our metrics are up, right? People are engaging with campaigns, participating 50% higher than before. Why? Because a lot of people are online. They're digitally available. At the same time, audience engagement, click-through rates, purchases, downloads. Those are up, depending on industry, 60 to 80%. So we have a lot more supply of influencers who are ready to do campaigns and activations. At the same time, right now, engagement is up. So our audience, there's high demand for it as well. And so now is a great time to be an influencer marketer. And Jackson, it looks like you have a comment or a question.
Yeah, there's actually a great question that's sort of related to this question of supply and demand that came in from Ryan Freeland. He wonders, is the pricing pretty standard based on the number of like influencers, or does this, or on the audience size rather of the influencer, or does the pricing vary a lot from influencer to influencer? Like, is there a reliable way to determine what a given influencer is going to cost you?
Yeah, it's a great question. And actually, we're going to get into that a little bit later. So influencers do tend to get priced a bit by the size and reach of their audience, but that's only one criteria out of many. And actually, one of the things we can do, and we can look at doing, is playing Moneyball. If you ever watched the movie with Brad Pitt, or actually, I probably should say, read the book by Michael Lewis. The premise of Moneyball was that, in the case of the example in the book and movie, the Oakland A's baseball team could field a team that was more competitive than really they should have been by looking for baseball players who were undervalued. And what we can do the same way with influencer marketing is looking for influencers who are undervalued relative to their reach and size. So typically an influencer like Kim Kardashian is not undervalued, but you can get a Kim Kardashian-like effect by looking at those who are, and kind of and grouping them in sort of teams of influencers that can achieve a similar result. So yes, they tend to follow their audience size a bit, but there's a lot of variance within that, and in general, you're looking for influencers who are undervalued. Okay, so that brings us, and I'll go back into the presentation here, and I'll share my screen again, and that brings us to the question of, why is influencer marketing such a powerful channel? What is it about it that allows us to really leverage the medium for what makes it better in many ways than a lot of other marketing channels? So the first answer to that is that 37% of consumers trust images created from influencers more than other types of images. So there's a trust element built in. That's the first part. So if consumers trust what comes from influencers more, already, if we're product marketers, we're ahead of the game if we're using that channel as a way to reach consumers. So that's the first thing. And I think one other part about influencer marketing that is really noteworthy is that it's also a very visual channel as well. So that's really important too. Brings us to the second statistic, which is 34% of consumers have discovered a new brand from an influencer post. So 34% are discovering new products, new brands, new offerings, new product lines, new campaigns from an influencer post. So at the same time that it's a trusted medium, it's also a powerful discovery medium as well. And here I'm going to kind of pull up my screen here. If we kind of leave from the chat for a second, one of the things that I think people miss out about influencer marketing is that if you approach it like buying an ad, and if it's just another way to achieve reach, why not just buy an ad if it's just advertising? And so I think some of the unique things that influencer marketing brings are the things about it that are not ad-like, that are different, that are more authentic, that are genuine. And if you can leverage those things, then your campaigns can drive an even higher ROI. So brings us to the next statistic here, which is 64% of those under age 30 actively follow influencers on social media. So if you are trying to reach a special audience, influencers can work across the board. And it's actually a bit of a myth that it's only geared at younger people. But if you do even have on top of that a real audience of those under 30, or those in the sort of like kind of the prized range of 18 to 49-year-olds, influencer marketing can really make sense. So they are actively consuming influencers on a regular basis. And if you look at the stats as well, when it's actively following, that means that usually consuming content from influencers, usually on a daily or certainly a weekly basis. And finally, this is important for all of us who want to sell products or services. 31% of consumers have purchased a product or service after seeing an influencer use it. So in addition to being a trusted channel, in addition to being a channel of discovery, it's also a channel of trial. And if you have an offering or a product or a service that benefits from product trial or trying the service, and you can't always structure it so that your potential customers or consumers can try it, having an influencer try it may be the next big thing. So the bottom line is this, is that in 2020, and let me just actually kind of make this point. In 2020, influencer marketing consistently earns higher engagement and conversion than traditional advertising. And I'm a fan of traditional advertising, right? We do many kinds of advertising campaigns for our clients, but influencer marketing, we find, consistently outperforms if you leverage and use the medium how it works best. And Jackson, I know you've done many influencer marketing campaigns yourself. How do you think it differs from advertising when it's done best? Like, why not just run an ad, in your opinion, rather than actually engage in an influencer marketing campaign? What is different about it?
Sure. Well, at some level, it's borrowed trust, Ben. I mean, it's that, what you're entrusting a influencer to do is to actually engage with their audience in a way that you can't. If you were able to do that through an ad, that would certainly be a tremendous advertising superpower for you, right? But in most cases, it's that you assume that the influencer knows their audience better than you do, but also that your audience knows the influencer better than they know you. So by sort of integrating influencers into your campaign, what you're able to do is use their trusted endorsement as sort of a introduction to your audiences. What that means is that you're not having to make a cold introduction. If Ben recommends something to me, I'm a lot more likely to pay attention than if I get served a Google ad. It's the same within your audiences.
Sure, it makes a lot of sense, and I think one thing that we'll be able to look at is how do you get started? And as you get started, as a question from Antoine here as well, what do you do that allows you to basically start with where the influencers have already taken their audience and fans, right? You don't have to start from scratch. So usually if you're a brand and you're just reaching an audience for the first time, maybe you're a new brand, maybe you're a startup, maybe you're an up and coming brand. Usually you're like, okay, we've got to have multiple touch points. We've got to build trust. We've got to show and demonstrate value. Yes, you still need to do all those things, but you get a head start. You get a jump start, right? It's like kind of running the race, but you get to start, if you're running a football field's length, you get to start at the 50-yard line instead of yard line 0. If you're leveraging what the rapport that the influencer already has with his or her audience. All right, so let's jump in and Jackson, keep the questions and comments coming, but I'm going to start with really the heart of the presentation now, which is 10 new rules of influencer marketing, and we're going to start with the first new rule. So 10 new rules of influencer marketing, and rule number one is leverage groups over individuals. Leverage groups over individuals. And the reason this is an important new rule is that no single influencer usually has the perfect audience. So what happens is when you use groups of influencers together, you can custom tailor a perfect fit. And so if I go here and let's talk about what that fit looks like. So leveraging groups over to individuals, we will often pool 6, 8, 10, 12, 20 different influencers together to get the perfect fit audience we want. So maybe we have a product or service that we're actively campaigning for, where there's different pockets of groups who could potentially buy the product or service. So we'll look at our influencer composition and say, okay, these influencers, this set of influencers is here to kind of reinforce our core age demographic range. But then in addition to that, we have an audience that has certain use cases which are specialized. Okay, we'll bring in 2 or 3 more influencers that can really speak to that specific use case. And then we'll say, well, also in certain industry verticals, our product or service has an appeal. Okay, let's bring influencers in those industry verticals as part of this campaign. And then we might say, oh, there's emerging audiences, whether that's, let's say, the Hispanic market or the LGBTQ market. Okay, let's bring in influencers that can reach and speak to that market in an authentic way. Let's bring that into the mix. So what we've done here is suddenly, instead of having one influencer or 2 influencers and being like, okay, we've got to find the person that's the right age demographic, that has the right experience with use cases, that can get us into certain industry verticals, that has these specialty audiences, and we've got to find that one perfect person or 2 perfect people. And by the way, celebrity marketing largely was done historically like this, right? We try to find that one person who really embodies the brand. Well, instead of that, we could actually pull together 20 different influencers that reflect all of those different audiences and dimensions for our product, and we can create that perfect fit audience in that way. So that is really, really exciting and really, really powerful because of the fact that when we do that, we can have a better custom fit tailored audience by working with groups of influencers. So let me show you what this looks like in action. And here is a campaign we did called the Milkbone Challenge. So Milkbone, a client of ours, needed to remind people to treat their dog on Valentine's Day, but the challenge was doing it on the day itself was too late. Why? Because if you're just hearing about this campaign, you don't have enough time on Valentine's Day to buy Milkbones and give it to your dog to express your love on that day. So the solution was we created Doggy Date Night, a new holiday, about 11 days before Valentine's Day, and leveraged 20 influencers. 7 were paid and very, very small amounts, typically $100 to $200 each, and 13 were unpaid. They were just participating and receiving Milkbone treats for their dogs as compensation for their participation. And we used 20 influencers to spread the word and create engagement. So what we did with this campaign is let's craft that perfect fit audience, not by finding that one celebrity influencer, but by having 20 influencers that talk about, in different ways, all of the audiences we wanted to reach for our pet-related campaign. And if we look at the results, here are some of the posts. So we had all kinds of, whether it was bloggers or social media stars or others who love pets. Sometimes people were full-time pet influencers. Some were from adjacent areas like lifestyle or like home as well. And in 2 hours, we focused this on Twitter. We were able to get 1,000 people participating directly. We were able to get an organic reach of 10 million people in that 2-hour period. There were 77 million impressions during that time. We generated more than 7,400 social posts. And in fact, our hashtag for Doggy Date Night trended on Twitter. So by using these groups of influencers in interesting and strategic ways, deploying them at a moment in time, we had an impact that would be much larger than a lot of celebrities could generate on their own. And we did this strategically and by partnering with influencers, by using groups of influencers together to achieve a desired goal. So any questions about that, post in the chat, let us know. Jackson, feel free to chime in as well. But that's the first new rule, is that utilize groups of influencers rather than just a single influencer. Brings us to our second new rule. And the second new rule talks about, if we're using groups of new influencers, how about let's layer multiple influencer tiers. So the new rule here is layer multiple influencer tiers. And to give you a sense of what are the numbers at different tiers, here's the breakdown. So travel influencers, if we're looking at travel, 5,800 influencers in the US alone have reached greater than 10,000 who are travel influencers. Now, if you jump up to 100,000, another cut, now you're talking about 1,300 influencers. If you jump up all the way to 1 million, now you're talking about 100 plus influencers. So these are different tiers. We would name these tiers macro, micro, and nano influencers. And you can use them in groups, and you don't have to use all of the same tier. Here's another example, lifestyle influencers, right? At the top tier, 61 influencers with a greater reach than 1 million in the US. And at the nano tier, 2,400 greater with a reach than 10,000. Or let's look at a niche area like automobile influencers. So let's do a car related campaign. 14 influencers at the sort of macro level, 224 influencers at the nano level, and right in the middle at the micro level, 61 influencers as well. So to do this well, we can leverage influencers at different tiers. Here is an example of that. Some work we did for Laffy Taffy. We did a campaign related to their new product that was just banana only flavor. One of the insights from our work and social listening we did with Laffy Taffy is that people either love or they hate banana flavor. So we thought, let's embrace this. Let's leverage this polarization to actually get more reach. And we had a campaign that utilized a celebrity at the top tier, a macro influencer, which is actually this kind of comic strip here, which has a very large and passionate audience. So we utilized sort of the comic strip artist as a macro influencer. And then a micro influencer was this family who actually went to City Hall and did a fun campaign where they were talking about banana in front of City Hall with signs. And by the way, they actually got a meeting with the mayor out of that, who was curious about what was going on. So with all of that, the idea here is that we can leverage different influencer tiers, and we can do that to great effect. Okay, that brings us to new rule number 3. And new rule number 3, which we're going to jump into in a second, is score your targets on key objectives. So it is very helpful to write down your objectives, to have a scorecard system to understand how each influencer is scoring, and using that to get the best group of influencers at the best tiers for your campaign. So let me jump in and I'll share my screen again. And in particular, here's some possible evaluation criteria that we use at one of the agencies that is part of Top Global, which is called PR Hacker, a big influencer marketing agency. And here are some of the criteria we use for our scorecard. So topic authority. Can the influencer speak knowledgeably about our product and its benefits? Audience size, that's what people usually go to from the beginning, but can they help us reach and engage with a larger audience? Sure, we want to meet some new people we don't know yet. Audience fit. Does the influencer resonate with potential consumers or customers we want to reach? So yes, you can just get a big audience size, but if it's not a good fit, then you don't have a lot of those influencer benefits we talked about. Visual appeal. So can our influencer visually represent the brand? Influencer marketing is in part a visual medium. So are they leveraging the visual medium well? Then finally, creative capability. Can the influencer produce creative content that adds value? So influencers can also help us reach new audiences and engage with new audiences and give us trust with new audiences. But also, influencers can just be great producers of creative content. And so those assets can be valuable to us, right? And in many influencer contracts, we might work in and say, okay, we have the right for, let's say, 2 years to use that content that the influencer generated in other forms, in other campaigns. So those are kind of 5 key influencer criteria. And for the audience and for Jackson, what of these criteria do you wish you used more of, right? If everyone's focused on audience size, what do you think, in Jackson, in your experience, of these 5, what is the overlooked criteria that could make campaigns more successful?
Yeah, for me, I gotta say it's creative capability. I mean, I think frequently with influencers who I think are undervalued, oftentimes those are people who really have tremendous production value and a lot of thoughtfulness and strategy and just, sort of clever thinking that goes into the content they're producing. Mm-hmm. And frequently we'll see, particularly when you start bringing out, amplification methods like Reddit, for example, to amplify an influencer's message, that really good content frequently can spread far beyond the follower count of the given influencer, right?
Mhm.
I think that ultimately is one of the biggest values that a good influencer will add, and that a bad influencer, even one with a big following, will be very lacking in.
Sure, absolutely, and I also think one aspect, and we can kind of see this if I'm going to jump in here to the kind of the influencer scorecard, and you're going to sort of see this is one of the aspects of this, and here's a sample scorecard for a campaign we did for a food brand, is that when you look at different dimensions and you score influencers in different ways, you might say that, okay, this particular influencer, Robin, she has a really strong food focus. She doesn't quite score as well for this campaign on sort of fitness related focus, because that's not what she does. But that might be okay when you look at the mix of influencers together, meaning we're going to pull in other influencers that have a real fitness focus, right? That might be a little bit less on food, right? Or less on health consciousness. And the group of them together is going to make a big difference by how we pool them together. And in particular, that creative capability that I think you're talking about, if we have some influencers that are great on creating content, and it's going to be like great food content, and others are going to have great content capability on sort of the fitness side of our product or service, and others yet are going to have the health side down. What happens is if you pool those influencers together, you're using them to create content that suddenly, as a brand, you've got like, wow, we've got great kind of food visuals and content. And oh wow, we've really highlighted the fitness side of our product. And oh great, we've shown how this is really healthy. Well, what you've done just right there is you have used influencers to create content around all of your unique selling propositions, right? Like, okay, oh, it's like really high quality and tastes great. Okay, it's really good for you. Okay, you're gonna get ripped, you're gonna be in shape, you're gonna lose weight, right? So you can start thinking of influencers too as content creators that help bring to life your unique selling proposition. And that's just a different way to think about influencers, and that's why we like this scorecard approach, as you can see here. New rule number 4, develop relationships instead of transactions. And what I mean by that is, here's an example of us working with a particular influencer where we had an established relationship and our budget fluctuated a lot, yet we were still able to work together. So Stephanie worked with us on a big budget campaign, Bowflex, a medium budget campaign, Laffy Taffy, and a small or no budget campaign, which was 3 Bridges breakfast bites. And so we worked together, we had different budget ranges, but because we had an established relationship, this wasn't just transactional. This wasn't just like either we pay her fee and we work together, or we don't pay her fee and we don't. Instead, it allowed us to be more flexible, to find ways of generating mutual value, to find ways to partner and deepen our relationship with the influencer, which continues to this day. So that's the value of being more relationship based. So again, new rule, develop relationships instead of transactions. And one of the aspects I kind of want to say in how you develop relationships and what you can do to develop relationships with influencers, one of the best things you can do is reward and celebrate great work. So one of the things we always try to do is we have a certain arrangement, a certain deal, a certain partnership with an influencer. But when they go above and beyond the call of duty, when they get a great response, we're the first ones to celebrate that, to reward them, to surprise and delight them, to send them an extra gift, to figure out other ways we can work together. And that's really important. So I think one of the ways that you go beyond a transaction, and this isn't just an ad buy, is you remember that there's people on the other end, and people like to be recognized, like to feel good about their work. They like to work with people who are fun to work with. And if you do all of those things, you can deepen the relationships a little bit faster. And when you do that, it has real impact to your campaign in the future. Brings us to new rule number 5, and I'll share my screen again here, which is time your message to seize the moment. Time your message to seize the moment. And the goal here with timing your message is that anytime we're in a marketing medium that involves conversion, right? We're trying to convert to a particular action. Timing becomes hugely important. And there's a lot more that you can do with influencers and timing. So here's how we might look at timing. Instead of just saying, yes, let's do an influencer campaign right now because we need to sell more products, we might look at, is there a certain drive period that we want to time our influencer campaign? Or we might do the opposite, right? Like, let's be the opposite of the drive period, right? We already have lots of marketing going on during the drive period. Let's actually adjust and go counter-cyclical to stay top of mind. Or is there an industry event coming up? Okay, during that industry event is a great time to be engaged with influencers. If the industry event actually has a physical location, let's engage with influencers around that physical location. Or is there a viral trend coming up? So it's not even something we can foresee, but suddenly there's a trend around a certain industry or a certain hashtag or a certain kind of use case that is trending. So identify windows of opportunity. And here's an example from a campaign where it was entirely time-based, where we were looking at, there was a kind of March Madness, but there was at the same time Soup Week and Appetizer Week and Barbecue Week and these moments in time that we could leverage. And in fact, we liked this so much that we built a platform to do just that. So it's called National Today. You can find it online at nationaltoday.com. And this is a platform that gathers all of those unique and viral and buzzworthy holidays. So, everything from National Margarita Day to National Tequila Day to National Love Your Pet Day to National Respect Your Cat Day to Breast Cancer Awareness Month to National Fetch Day, which we just created for a pet brand as the day to play fetch with your dog. So it spans this entire range of holidays. It's a division of our agency, and we've become the most popular, National Day's most popular website in the world, with about 5 million unique visitors per month for these buzzworthy and interesting holidays. And we actually have at National Today our own influencer network of 3,500 plus influencers that just love celebrating these holidays. So one, you can help engage in a time-sensitive way through these holidays, and we're happy to help you do that. But also in your own campaigns, how do you add a time element that drives customers or consumers or your target audience to an action? And influencers can be a great way to do that. Brings us to new rule number 6. Use blueprints to scale creativity. And when we engage in influencer campaigns, what we tend to do is look at patterns that have worked well in the past. So what types of creative campaigns do we find drives higher engagement with high trust and high authenticity? What kind of structures can we create that allow our audience to participate? Let's create those kind of structures. How do we generate campaigns or activations that allow influencers room to be really creative and create really awesome creative content? That tends to follow certain patterns. So for us, we develop a series of blueprints, and we use those blueprints to create meaningful and creative influencer work. So let me give you an example of what this looks like. And when I give you this example, we're going to leverage the power of influencer blueprints. I'm going to show you what some of our influencer blueprints actually look like. So first blueprint here, we call it Fav Story or Favorite Story. And you can see every blueprint of ours has a code name, in this case, Fave Story. It has a question, which in this case talks about the personal stories that influencers can share that shine a special spotlight on our product or product category. And then it has a methodology to execute. So in this case, the Fav Story blueprint is all about an influencer sharing a personal story or anecdote that spotlights the aspects of our product or our brand that we want to highlight. That's one proven way to kind of activate a campaign. But now let's go a totally different way, local view. So for this campaign, this blueprint, how can our audience see the benefits of what we do through the unique local view of influencers? So this is a different approach where suddenly we'll say, okay, here's a day in the life of this influencer locally. How does our brand fit into their life? And that's a different construct that allows us to be creative and work with influencers in an engaging and interesting way. Or another one, scavenger. So let's create an interactive quest that supports the messaging of our brands. We'll have our influencers go search for something and encourage their audiences to do so too. If you ever played a scavenger hunt as a kid, and you had to go get these 10 things and find them. We'll do that with 10 things or 10 aspects of a brand's value. we'll have them go search for it and find those things. Or challenge. So how can we motivate influencers to actually use our products or services in the real world by giving them a challenge, right? We'll issue a challenge and look for influencers and their fans who can accomplish some kind of difficult feat in an interesting way. Or photo wow, another influencer blueprint. So let's generate amazing visual content, right? So let's engage our influencers and their audiences in helping us create those visuals on social media that can be viral and can be shared. Or create live. Here's an overlooked one. Let's use mediums like whether that's Facebook Live or YouTube Live or other platforms where we can live stream content, and let's make our target audience feel special by being a part of this live event with our influencers. Or remember when, another blueprint that I love, which is let's activate emotions of nostalgia and positive feelings, and let's have influencers talk about and reminisce way back when and bring that to the present day. And finally, join cause. So we can have our influencers engage in a noteworthy or positive cause for social change or goodwill or giving back or social justice. And that can be a powerful way to demonstrate our brand's commitment to that, get more reach, and actually bring in more people who are going to be really supportive and sympathetic of that cause. So those are all ways that we can leverage blueprints to get better influencer reach, better influencer performance, better influencer ROI, and it tends to follow these patterns. So I call this structured creativity. And by using predefined blueprints, it makes us more creative, not less. And the reason is, instead of worrying about the blocking and tackling of how we're going to execute this campaign, instead, we can look at the pattern that really works well before and focus on how do we really message the voice of our brand? How do we really leverage the genuine and authenticity of our influencers? How do we create visuals and other material that really speak to what we're trying to communicate? By using these blueprints and using these patterns that we predefine, we can focus on the message, not just how we deliver the message, and that allows us to be more creative, and that's really powerful. Jackson, thoughts on that? Questions? I know you use blueprints a lot when you work with some of the folks you do on our agency projects like Top Global. Do you have a favorite blueprint? I know we use them across PR and influencer and social media, many other things. Is there a blueprint that comes to mind that you enjoy using?
Definitely. I really enjoyed the challenge blueprint. It's one of my favorites because there's frequently a competitive element to it, and also an element of kind of like virality that's built in, right? You can think of as an example of one of these, like the ice bucket challenge is a great example of a challenge blueprint in the influencer space that I think is excellent, and is one of my personal favorites.
Okay, great. No, that's one, and I think anytime you build in, that's a great example of a natural way that audiences engage. It can be really powerful. All right, so we've hit 6 new rules. Now, new rule number 7: systematize the production process. So influencer marketing, kind of before the old way, it used to be kind of a very sort of individualized, not particularly efficient medium. And now there's a lot you can do to be a lot more productive, efficient, effective, and scalable as you engage influencers. So here's what an 8-week influencer campaign management timeline often looks like for us. In the first phase, let's say week 1, you're discovering influencers, you're researching, you're finding, you're casting either a wide net or a very focused targeted net on which kind of influencers do we want to pull into this campaign. Week 2, you're contacting the influencers. You're contacting them and you're seeing who's available, who's interested, who's really passionate about this. Week 3, you're helping co-create content. So you're giving guidelines, you're giving influencer freedom to create content as best they see fit, and you're finding ways to create fresh and interesting content. Then weeks 4 through 7, you're activating. That's when the campaign's live. That's when we're measuring reach. That's when we're engaging with audiences. And then finally, at the end, you wrap up, you gather analytics, you gather insights, and you learn to better deploy future campaigns, measure impact, you retain your most important influencers, and then you start the cycle all over again. So that's what a process often looks like. And one of the things before we go and just before we go into kind of the next slides here, I kind of want to mention is that as you do this again and again, it gets more efficient and more effective. So one of the ways that you can optimize the process is keeping a lot of detailed metrics, writing standard operating procedures for everything that you do, which are basically just a step-by-step approach that you can then implement again and again. And then as you do that and you keep those analytics and metrics for influencers, one of the great benefits of that is that actually then you actually can tell in real time who are the influencers who are driving the best result and the biggest impact. And you can double down on those relationships. You can extend, you can expand. We've worked before where even during a campaign, an influencer campaign, we're actually working on the next campaign with the influencer, and we're starting to iterate and starting to expand and starting to enhance what we're doing. And those are all things you can do when you systematize the production process. Brings us to new rule number 8. And let me kind of share my screen again here, which is encourage authentic self-expression. And here's one more stat I want to give you, which is 61% of consumers say that authenticity is the most important quality in an influencer. And so if authenticity is the most important, then, for example, in what you see on the screen now, you might not try to exert such command and control that you don't get content that's a little bit different than what you expect. So on the left-hand side, this was a campaign for Laffy Taffy, and we had a dad influencer kind of making a dad joke here. What kind of tree grows in your hand? A palm tree. And using a little fun visual to do it. And even though it's not super polished for the brand, it was fun and actually had great audience, and we let him kind of speak how he wanted to speak best. Now, the right-hand side was another campaign for Three Bridges, our Egg Bites campaign. And this was a dad who was just prolific and creative in creating these sort of like visually artistic meal moments for his kids. And we just let him do that. We didn't say, oh, the campaign is only like this. It's only this blueprint. You can't express yourself in the way that's best for you. And we got interesting content as a result from that. So you offer guidelines, but maybe without strict controls. And that rewards you with diverse content that sometimes can mash up or riff on your initial idea in new and interesting ways. And that unexpectedness sometimes can be the best parts of your campaign. So brings us here back to one of the biggest points and one of the biggest things that trips up new brands doing that, which is it's not about controlling and vetting everything that influencers do. If you do that, you can control things, but you're probably leaving some return on investment ROI on the table if you do that, because you're not benefiting from the creativity and their own unique voice that the influencer brings. So instead, new rule, encourage authentic self-expression, give guidelines, give a framework, but then allow influencers to engage in the audience in the manner at which they know their audience will respond. And you'll get much better influencer results if you take that approach. Okay, brings us to the last two new rules, and then we'll finish with the thought of the day, which is new rule number 9, give your audiences a reason to engage. So give your audiences a reason to engage. There's many reasons people might engage, right? They might engage because, hey, this campaign, if I share this content, it supports my brand, right? It says something about me. People might engage because you just made them laugh, or you made them cry, or you brought out some emotion. Other people may engage because they're just, passionate about the topic, and you've done something that's just like subject matter or topically really resonates with them. Others may engage because it's a great moment in time to engage, right? You just have their undivided attention. But I would argue that all of those things we could actually summarize in 3 ways. And that is, what makes an idea easy to spread? And it's three things. One, is it simple? It absolutely has to be simple, because if it's not simple, it's very hard to get it to spread because it's complex. It takes us a long time to share. If I heard about a great activation that I saw an influencer do, and I want to tell my friend Jackson about it, if it takes me 20 minutes to explain to Jackson what that campaign was all about, it's going to be tough for this to spread because Jackson's a busy guy and I might not get 20 minutes of his time today. And so I've got to wait until I can really explain this whole thing, and it's going to just slow down our momentum. So simplicity is one aspect. Second is surprise, right? We think we've all seen it before. We've heard it before. So how do we add an element of surprise? That's going to make an idea easier to spread. And third is significance. Does it say something deeper and more important? Is it something worth saying? So what makes an idea easy to spread? It's if it's simple, surprising, and significant. And here's an example of a campaign that fits that bill, which was the Cheerios challenge. It was this moment about stacking Cheerios, the cereal, on your baby's forehead. And it went viral so much that we had dads doing it, and also President Obama. And this was a campaign that was spearheaded by now our president's, our head of influencer relations, Patrick. And it was simple. Absolutely, it's Cheerios on a baby's head. Is it surprising? Yeah, I haven't seen that one before quite in that way. Was it significant? It actually was, because we were saying something interesting about dads, how dads, love and engage with their kids. And many of them bring out a humorous and fun side. That's something worth celebrating. And all of those things allowed us to be simple, surprising, and significant. So new rule number 9 is give your audiences a reason to share. Give them a reason to want to engage. And if you give them a reason, if you make your campaign more simple, that's a better reason. If you make your campaign more surprising, more unexpected, that's a good reason for them to engage and share. And if you make your campaign say something deeper, have a deeper purpose, have a deeper message, that's another reason for your audience to engage. So that's the litmus test: simple, surprising, and significant. And if you do that, they will engage in greater numbers. Brings us to the final new rule, which is new rule: measure results and brand performance. And this means that the new rule is influencer campaigns before used to be a lot about vanity metrics, right? It really wasn't about measurement. It was like, okay, if we take the audience size on Instagram of these 20 influencers and we add it all up, we get a big number. That number, means it's big, and big is good, and therefore the campaign is good. Instead, if we can go deeper with measurement, understand how influencers are affecting the consumer decision journey, the process of going from awareness to consideration to purchase. Or let's say how influencers are helping engage with our existing customers in ways that deepen the relationship, right? That's the path to passion. Are people experiencing the product, having repeat use, and then becoming loyal fans? So thinking deeply about those kind of analytics, thinking deeply about share of voice. Are influencers allowing us to have a greater share of voice in a topic or an industry or with an audience that we wouldn't otherwise have? And can we measure how that share of voice changes? Or brand lift. As a result of this campaign, are more influencers able to identify our brand? Are we seeing more inbound links to a certain page? Are we converting more visitors to try a free trial or sign up for an initial product term because they're coming in to our website with a greater brand halo from an influencer? Those are all important things that allow us to measure more effectively. So as we do that, if we kind of jump in here, new rule number 10, measure results and reward performance. And this is some of the kind of metrics in real time that we deliver for our clients that you can do on your own as well, which is how do you actually in real time track what's working and double down on the things that are working and optimize the things that are good and not great, and discard the elements of your campaign that have a lower ROI to focus on what gives you the higher ROI. So at its end, even though influencer marketing sometimes don't have the most rigorous kind of campaign metrics compared to, like, if you're buying like digital ads, if you bring in a little bit more of that rigor, you're going to be able to understand your audience better, understand the return on investment better, focus on those areas that drive the best return. And influencer marketing can be highly related and highly aligned with your overall business goals. So that's the top 10. And I'm going to end on one final thought of the day, which is probably my most important kind of bit of tips and advice. But before I do that, Jackson, any final comments or questions from the audience? And if you're a participant too, let me know. Any final questions, whether that's, whether that's, I see Amy or Rob, or I don't know, Goji Berry, who you are, but nice to meet you as well. Any final questions or thoughts before we wrap up with the final thought of the day?
Nothing right now from the audience, but I think one thing that's helpful here is that you're going to have the opportunity also to reach out to Ben directly. So if you have any questions that occur to you after the fact, or anything you'd like help on or insights on, Ben will be able to respond to your questions on Twitter, on LinkedIn, etc.
Yes, and actually that's a great prompt before we sort of end on our thought of the day, which is some resources for next steps. One, if this webinar was useful, you can get access to all of our latest, not only webinars, but also kind of tutorials, tips, trainings. If you go to my YouTube page, and so the way you can get to that is easily, actually maybe Jackson would kind of put up a link in the chat room, but basically a simple way, you go on YouTube and just Google my name, Ben Kaplan, Kaplan, and if you do want to do like Ben Kaplan and then pivot, don't pause, which is one of my webinars I'm famous for, it'll come up right away. You just Google that, or Ben Kaplan kind of marketing, that will get you there too. So subscribe to the YouTube page, and Jackson, if you don't mind, let's put up the link to it in the chat room. Second, we have these slides and blueprints are available for download, and if we can add that to the chat as well, there's a page where you can sign up and we'll give you the slides and the blueprints, so we can add that there too. And then third, my email address is I have many email addresses at different agencies, but one that gets me pretty fast is ben.kaplan@prhacker.com. I'd love to hear your questions, and of course would love to help brainstorm what an influencer campaign would look like, and if our agency can help. So those are all resources for you. And Jackson, any difficulty finding the links to everything, or did we get those posted?
YouTube link was just posted, and right now I am posting the link for anyone who wants the slides.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. And here's the question I always ask, which is, what is the one thing? So of everything we covered today, what is the one thing that sticks with you, that is most useful, that resonates to you, that you won't forget, that you took notes on? And that's really what I always try to do is whenever I go to a webinar or I go to a conference and I hear a presenter, I might hear 30 great pieces of interesting advice, but I try to remember, like, what's the one thing I'm going to take with me that can impact my business, can impact my work, I can implement tomorrow. And so I'd love to know, what is your one thing? Tweet it at me at Benjamin Kaplan, let me know. And that's just our way also of knowing, like, what is the stickiest part of this presentation? If we want our presentation to be more simple, more surprising, more significant, what can we do better? So tweet at me, what is the one thing at Benjamin Kaplan? And then one little other kind of hack for connecting with people, which is if you grab your phone, here's mine, and if you pull up the LinkedIn app and you want to connect to LinkedIn, I'm happy to connect with you. If you go to the search bar, there is a little icon for the QR code there. Press that icon, and then you can choose if you want to display your code or scan another code. Choose scan another code. Hold up your phone directly to the computer, and you scan my code. And even over the computer, it will take you to my LinkedIn page. Or Jackson, if you don't mind, you can post the link to LinkedIn, my LinkedIn, which is up there on the screen, and take a picture of it if you want. And happy to connect with you. Just put in your LinkedIn request that you were a participant in one of the webinars. Let me know which one, and that will clue me in to accept your request. And I'm happy to connect with you that way. And we often, post new content there. It always goes to the YouTube channel, but also some of the content goes to LinkedIn as well. And it brings us to the final thought of the day. And that thought, first of all, it involves a recap of the 10 things and the 10 new rules that can make influencer marketing more effective in July 2020. And so let's go over that right now. So 1, leverage groups over individuals. New rule number 2, layer multiple influencer tiers. They don't have to be all the same tier of influencer. 3, score your targets on key objectives and actually have an actual scorecard that you can create. New rule number 4, develop relationships instead of transactions. Deepen those relationships over time. You'll get better results. New rule number 5, time your message to seize the moment. So being really spot on in the timing of your campaign has a huge impact on its effectiveness. New rule number 6, use blueprints to scale creativity. Remember some of those ones like challenge and fave story and local view and photo wow, to name a few. 7, systematize the production process. It can be more efficient and more effective if you develop a process and standard operating procedures for all of this. New rule number 8, encourage authentic self-expression. So give guidelines, but don't control if you're a brand. New rule number 9, give your audience a reason to engage. And remember, some of those reasons can include simplicity and surprise and significance. And then finally, measure results and reward performance. You can't optimize if you don't measure first. So the key to scaling is to have really great measurement as you move forward. And so that brings us to the final part and the final point of the day. And that point is that with influencer marketing, and especially right now, one of the best things you can do is to jump in and iterate. This isn't something where you have to be perfect from the start. We've done hundreds of influencer marketing campaigns, and we've gotten better with every campaign. And so that is a big part of this process. So what I would suggest doing is not trying to make this the perfect campaign, not trying to even make this has to be the biggest budget campaign. Instead, get started right away. Try to get started in simple ways. And if we can be of great help in that, we would love to be. We do influencer campaigns for some of the largest brands in the world that are huge productions. And we also do influencer campaigns for bootstrapped, scrappy startups that are just trying to find their product market fit or find their first initial 1,000 customers. And we do that too. And we love doing both, but especially we love doing influencer campaigns where it really makes a difference for the company or brand, whether you're big or small. So look for ways to get started and iterate on that. Instead of having to be perfect, instead do influencer campaign 1.0 and 1.1 and 2.0 and 1.2 and 2.0 and 3.0 and 3.1, and you'll iterate and you'll get better much faster. And if we can be of great help in that, because we've iterated quite a bit already, we would love to be of service to you and your brand. So thank you so much for coming. Thank you to Jackson Carpenter for being a great MC and participant in some of the questions. Please email me if you have more questions at ben.kaplan@prhacker.com. And the number one thing you can do if you want more content is to go to my YouTube channel. Just search for Ben Kaplan YouTube, and you can type in pivot don't pause. So Ben Kaplan pivot don't pause, and that will get you to the YouTube channel. Subscribe to the channel, and I'm really looking forward to releasing more interesting content. And I hope today's webinar has been useful. All right, thanks so much. Thank you, Jackson. Thank you to everyone in attendance, and we'll talk to you next week, where next week we'll cover the new rules of social media. All right, thanks everyone. See you for now.